Welcome back to the Scale Builders Guild. Thanks again for watching. This is the build video, or at least build highlights video for the VS410 Phoenix. This is a new release from Vanquish Products, and this is an excellent product. This is going to be all voiceover today. We're going to just basically let the build kind of play out here, and I've highlighted certain sections that I found to either be different from VS410 Origin, Pro, Ultra, what have you, and sort of go through all of those build steps in as much detail as I could possibly do. So, hope you enjoy this. If you have any questions, by all means, put a comment down below. You know I love reading through your feedback, and I try to answer as many of them as I can. Alright, let's get started with the build. We're going to start by showing off the Vanquish Products thread lock and grease that is included in the kit. That grease is fantastic. I highly recommend it. So these are the new F10 Vanquish portal axles. They are all plastic in construction. Despite being plastic, they are exceptionally overbuilt. There is a ton of material here and not a lot of failure points. I'm really impressed. These are the bearing retainers that go inside the ring and pinion, which all get assembled on this portion of the axle. They don't go into the actual axle. This assembly all goes into the axle housing itself. Lots of weight saving there, but still tons of strength in that plastic. Here's the brass sleeves that get inserted into the plastic axle for added strength, rigidity, and weight down low where you want it. Standard Vanquish ring and pinion gears. These are metal sintered gears. There's the pinion there. And of course, you can go overdrive, underdrive with these gear sets as well to really get some crazy ratios. I recommend just building it as stock first, just to kind of get a good handle on how the truck's going to perform. So here I am just assembling it onto the actual locker and applying the 7 by 14 by 3.5 millimeter bearings on the locker there, and then the bearing retainers get added as well. We're going to liberally apply some grease to that pinion. Same thing to the ring gear. And it's pretty good friction tight fit there. And just spin the ring gear there and just make sure everything is seated properly. And then you can go ahead and actually drive that bearing retaining locker into the assembly. I like to do this by hand rather than using a power driver, just so I don't strip anything, and I also make sure that there's not too much torque, which could result in actually some deflection there, and then that ring and pinion won't spin properly. Now we're going to place the brass sleeves inside the axle housing. They are obviously, because it's a offset front diff, the sleeves are different lengths, so make sure you're putting the right one on the right side. Then the whole ring and pinion gear assembly gets added into the axle housing. Again, the fit and finish on these parts is pretty spectacular. I didn't have any trouble getting everything to fit. Again, hand tools just to make sure you're torquing them down the proper amount, and I always spin everything after I've done a step just to make sure that everything is still working. Here's the new 5mm stub axle. This goes on the outside of the portal box, and that's going to be where you're going to mount up your hexes for your wheels and tires. Again, checking that everything's spinning freely, making sure you're using the right bearings in the right places. Now we're adding our universal shaft and greasing up the inside of the portal box so everything gets nice and lubricated. That does key into position. When you've got the right bearings in, it goes together. If you don't have the right bearings in, it will not go together. So definitely check your bearing sizes as you're assembling. Now we're adding that universal and the portal box to the axle housing. Again, do not torque these all the way down. You do want to have them loose enough that there is freedom of movement in both directions in order to take advantage of that 49 degrees of steering angle. And again, checking to make sure everything's spinning freely. And we're just going to zoom through the other side because this is exactly the same, just mirrored. No need to show all of that in real speed. And again, testing, make sure everything is spinning properly. And here are this is the Vanquish tool to install that aluminum cap on the rear axle, which is pretty cool. Really nice little finish there, so you don't damage that part. And there's the rear axle assembled too. All of the steps are essentially the same, except there is no steering knuckle. So again, pretty easy to follow directions. The manual does a great job of making sure everything goes together properly. You could use that plastic oil cap if you didn't like the aluminum one, but I don't know why you would. Okay, so onto the chassis. This chassis is essentially a carryover from every other VS410. Same chassis rails, everything's basically the same. Pow! Back together. There it is. Shock towers, everything's the same. Here's the new slipper assembly for the VFD Twin. So this is the first time VFD transmissions had a slipper clutch. Nice to see that. I think it's probably wise considering that you could potentially lock this truck in rear-wheel drive and still have dig applied. So you might want to make sure that you had a slipper clutch so you didn't break any of those new parts. All goes together quite simply. And then here's the new portion of the VFD Twin. So originally there would have been one set of gears. Now there's two sets of gears. So you're going to have these shifting mechanisms in between the sets of gears. So you've got your 6% overdrive and then your 33% overdrive, and they're all in one assembly. So it gains a little bit of length, and you're going to have to make sure you get some of those E-clips in there. Do not forget those. I found it easier to put the gasket in first with the lever at the same time. It just seemed to work better that way. You're going to want to line up that shifting arm with that hole. And here we are putting the grub screws in. And that's just to show you that you can lock out these arms too. So put them in, not all the way in, otherwise you will lock it like you see there. And there's the brass pin that holds both shifting arms in place. And of course, that hole in the shifting arm there, that's where the grub screw would go to lock it out. So if you wanted to lock out no dig, you wanted to lock out 33% overdrive, that's how you would do it. Just by changing the depth of that grub screw, making sure that arm is in place, and then it's completely locked out. No movement whatsoever. So we're going to loosen that grub screw back because we are going to want to use this as a full function truck. And there you go. This is not the proper assembly order. You should put the motor in before you put the transmission in, but for the purposes of showing off the chassis, I just wanted to kind of put it in there and show it off. As you can see, the whole VFD twin shifting portion does add some length, and of course it'll add a little bit of weight to the truck overall, but it is a still very nicely balanced truck. The new SC8E shock is an 8mm bore, has a bleed screw, and has not leaked whatsoever since I built them. There is one thing I caution you on though, and that's the actual shock collar. It threads on not necessarily perfectly the first time, so you may have to make some adjustments. For link assembly, you cannot beat the Serba tool and the Team Garage Hack tool. I've got both of these. And watch how fast these links go together. You put the rod ends on ever so loosely and then use a power driver and boom. Links are made. Wasn't that simple? So effective, so easy. I'll put a link down below where you can get both of those tools. So after all of that, that's where your chassis is going to sit. It is a really great looking chassis. And it just goes together so beautifully. If you've ever built a VS410, you're going to have a great time building this. Here are the new sliders specific to the new body for the Phoenix. They are multi-piece and attached to the existing sliders. So this is kind of built around the opportunity for you to change those sliders. You can put on the ones for the Pro body if that's more to your style, or use nothing at all. These are the new injection molded front inner sliders, and they are awesome. It's really great to see a piece of that quality. There's the radiator that goes in the front that sort of hides the electronics from the front of the truck. What I really like about this chassis is that it feels like everything just kind of goes together properly in the place that it's meant to go. Everything keys in really well. And there's not a lot of guesswork as to where something should go. And these are retainers for lights. If you were going to do rock lights, that's where you would install those. And wheels and tires built, nothing fancy about that. They mount up okay. I think the tires are still, well, they're definitely not my favorite tire. But for the purposes of doing this video, I wanted to do it all stock. Here's all my Tekin electronics. I'm using T120s for shifting duties, and you must use 24mm servo arms. There's another one for the dig, T120 again. Really like that they're all rigid mounting points, and stainless links are even at this level. So there it is, all wired up. RX4 Tekin Rock 412 3100 kV. Plenty of KVs for this truck. I might actually start running this on 4S just so I have even more top end. It's a really nicely laid out truck. There is a place for everything, and keeps it nicely balanced too with the way that they've distributed everything. It's got a 50-50 left to right weight balance, 55-45 front to rear. So it's really well balanced. It's a great truck. I'm really impressed. There weren't a lot of steps that I found to be very difficult. As long as you're following the instructions and you're paying close attention to what goes where and the size of things, the manual does a really good job of making sure it's kind of impossible to screw it up. The great thing about the manual is that any part listed in the step is usually presented in a 1-to-1 format, so you know exactly what size everything needs to be. A nice smooth belly, nice smooth plastic axles. This truck does a really great job on the rocks just because there is so much more plastic. I'm confident that Vanquish will offer a set of machined axles to match this kit. It only makes sense that they would offer an upgrade path, and while I do think that's going to happen. I think it's really great that they did lower the price to make this a little more affordable to start. Here's some elements of the cage. And these little clips are included and are used to get those panels to affix to the cage. Make sure that you're installing them in the proper direction. You want less plastic up top on the top of the clip and then more on the bottom for the screw to seat properly in. And there it is on one side installed. Really nice cage. Really ties the whole truck together, in my opinion. I really like it. I like the fact that you can run it without the panels too, which I think would be pretty neat. I may do that on my next one. And there's a truck all completed. That is a Bruiser driver. I got him from a Tamiya kit. I think you can, that's actually a vintage resin repop. You can get plastic ones, so that should be something you can get. Josh obviously had to put his mark on this truck. That is built into that window sticker, so nothing you can do there. Light buckets, a little bit of paint work, and you've got a great looking truck ready to hit the trails. And that's where the body clips are for the rear, and then there is a post that goes to the front of the truck, which I've shown off in other videos. I used on-point paint to make it look like this, and that can be found at any Canadian hobby retailer. So there you go. I think that's going to cover it. I hope this helped. And if you have any other questions, like I said, post them down below. Always happy to answer your questions. If you like this video, hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and ring that notification bell so you get updates anytime there's a new video from the Scale Builders Guild. I think that's going to do it. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you again soon.